Mhm.
Hi, guys. Welcome back to Cat Lovers. I'm Michael with the Pets Journey, joined by Pam Roussel. Tonight, we're unlocking the secrets of feline longevity, how nutrition, herbs, energy, love can add vibrant years to your cat's life. Grab your questions. Let's get started. Hello, Pam. How are you this evening?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited about this topic we've got tonight, longevity. You know,
Yes.
I never know what we're gonna, it's always fun to like pick out the topic for the next week, and I never know what we're gonna pick out. And it's just kind of like, so I had a little help from my friend Chat today, and I was talking to him, and I'm like, okay, what should we do? Or the other day when I finally got the room, and he said, and like four different things came up, and one was longevity, and I was so excited to see that longevity that people are starting to concern themselves with their longevity of their pets.
Hey, Amanda. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, hey Amanda,
Um,
welcome.
no, I know. And I think as people become more aware of their own health and want to live healthier, longer lives, they obviously want that for their pets too. So it just goes hand in hand. The more we learn about how to do that for ourselves, the more it drives us to learn about doing it for our pets and vice versa. Like some people just want to learn how to help their pets live healthier, longer lives. And then in turn, it makes them curious about exploring ways that they can do that for themselves. So I love how it works both ways.
Yeah, for me, it's really. I remember like probably about 2 years ago with our longevity formula. There
Hmm.
it is, everybody. And if you guys come into our live today and you want to pick this up for your pet, you can actually pick it up. There's a link in our description down below, and if you use the code at checkout, Journey, you'll get a discount for being part of our family today. But a couple of years ago, Dr. Kyle's like, because I always get, chest colds during winter, and we've talked about this before. And he's like, "Oh, let me get you longevity." And Dr. Kyle is so sweet. He's always so sweet. Like whenever, like, I'm definitely older than my husband and Dr. Kyle, so I'm the old one here, and so it's like they're always taking care of me. They're always doing stuff for me, and so like when I get sick, Dr. Kyle's like, "Okay, now you need to take this herb," and it's
Yep.
like we already have, I've got a full bottle of longevity, right? So I already have that. And then he's like, on top of that, you're going to take this one because it's got heat in it. And you're going to take this one because and it's just like, it's very interesting to like, for me, before I even got in it, which is like we talk about, it either goes one way or the other. You're in the pet business, you get back into the human industry, or you're in the human industry, you get into the pet industry, and
Hmm.
one leads itself to the other. And I kind of go backwards in the sense of I'm in the pet business and I keep going back to the human side, which is me with my partner, and we are doing everything herbal these days. We're really trying to make a difference in what we do, because here we're out there preaching about Chinese herbs, and it's like, why not for us?
Hmm.
We and that's like what you're saying. It's like, because I even like, we get so caught up in like taking care of our partners, our friends, our loved ones, our furry family, and all that. And also, we forget about ourselves, and it's like, wait a second, stop. Let's take care of ourselves. So it's like, so once again, when this topic came up, longevity, I was so excited, because I was like, oh wow, I'm so happy to see that that's on people's radars today,
Hmm.
because because I don't think it's been on. I mean, of course, and it's funny. I came up with that little line. Where is it? It's called the Feline Fountain of Youth. I love that little line, that but it's like, we've all been looking for the fountain of youth forever. That's the biggest thing out there, that everybody's like, oh, have you found the fountain of youth? And all this, and we're looking forward to all around the world. And so it's interesting to have our formula longevity with the Eastern herbs, because it's like, they definitely, and these are century-year old, this is a century-old formula. This is not something that we just
Hmm.
created yesterday. This has been
Right.
around for centuries. So the Asian market, they knew what they were doing. They were onto something way before we ever were, and probably still are, for their wellness. And it's just so nice. So what do you, when you get do you get a lot of people coming to you saying, I want my cat to live forever? What do I do?
To be honest, no, because they usually have a specific reason, a condition that's not resolved, or an acute. crisis of some kind, unfortunately, but that's what drives them to look at alternative stuff because what they're doing isn't working. And so they are trying to seek out additional information, new information. And hats off to them because that can be a very scary place to go out of your comfort zone and out of your box, jump out of your box and go look at other modalities and alternatives that you haven't heard much about, you have never explored before. But something comes across their radar, or they'll see an article, or they're online googling, information about, let's say, pancreatitis in cats and holistic help, for pancreatitis in cats, and all those keywords tend to in a lot of cases people say, I found your website and an article when I was searching for, XYZ. And so that's cool because that tells me that they are wanting to learn,
Yeah.
and what they're doing hasn't worked. And so they're open to learn something different. But, in the back of I'm sure every pet parent is always thinking about what can I do to help my cats, be here longer. Just like Amanda said, I'm so sorry. She lost Sebastian. Sebastian lost his littermate brother. Sorry.
Right, right,
I need
right.
to wear my glasses. and, I want to hold on to longer. He's 11. In my experience, 11 is not old. That's like midlife. That's like the new 40 in the
Well,
human
and
year.
like you say, it's a new 40, but it has changed for pets too. I mean, I think pets are living longer. Like go on, you were gonna say?
There's a condition there. They're living longer if they're doing something different.
Right. The pet parents that are doing something different with their
Different.
pets these days that are really looking at stuff like longevity, like their wellness
Yes.
and doing things holistic versus everything so chemical
Yes.
and Western. So yes, I agree with that. That is the number one thing that it has to
Yes.
happen for it to happen. Right.
Yes, yeah, versus, like, the person who is feeding their cat dry food all its life and goes in every year when their vet sends them a postcard and said, "Come get your next round of vaccines," and they put flea and tick meds on them, and they burn candles in their house, and they use Tide laundry soap. You know what I'm saying? It's like they're doing all the conventional ways that those of us who've been in that cycle that, banged our head against the wall long enough that we started to realize this hurts. I need to stop. you know? And
Right.
I need to rethink what I'm doing because I'm not getting the results I want. My cats are not thriving. You know what I mean? And they're ending up having kidney problems and vomiting problems and these chronic issues. And so just like us, if we want to get a different outcome, we have to change what we're doing, and it's no different from for pets.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's always surprising. It surprises me every time I'm on the phone with someone new that's calling me about our formulas. And just the other day, I was on a call with a lady, and I was on there for an hour. It's crazy how time flies,
Mhm. Mhm.
and I think, I feel like I sometimes need to do like a little clause with them, like, no, I'm not billing you for my time right now, because you hear like they have a little anxiety in their voice when they're sharing with me. When it goes so long, they're like, well, okay, I'll let you go. I'll let you go. I'm like, no, it's okay. We're okay. We can continue to talk about that because I really want to get clear. So you're clear in what we're talking about, because this
Mhm.
is education now.
Mhm.
You've just opened the door to a new way of looking at your wellness for your pets, and there's a huge education that goes along with it. And that's like, and it was really cute because this lady, she has a rescue dog that's just kind of, he's in his teens right now, and he's just kind of bouncing off the walls right now. She doesn't know what to do. And I'm like, well, how old is he? He's like a year and a half, almost to going on to, in between. And so he's still kind of like baby
Puppy.
teens. Yeah.
Mhm.
Uh-huh. And I said, well, he's going into his terrible twos right now. And you have to remember that it's just like for our kids, our pets have that too. Believe it or not, they do go through these emotional things. And it's interesting now because I am even asking this question. I'm like, well, is he fixed?
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
after all our conversation about like, let's hold off on a boy a little longer for the testosterone that go into the system, because that could be potentially part of his issue, is the fact that he got fixed so early on in life and he didn't have all those extra hormones to kind of help balance out his own system, that it has thrown him off a little bit. What do you think about that?
I guess it's possible. It's not really my wheelhouse, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
I
just
really don't know, but I mean, what I have learned to say is anything is possible. When you just get all the information in front of you and you have, you know, done the research, you can kind of start to connect some dots. But in some cases, it can be breed related, and like you said, it could be just age. And in some cases, it's just boredom. Like some pets are just bored, and when they're not exercised and they don't have the physical and mental stimulation, they get a little restless and they can get a little out of sorts because they're just a bunch of balled up energy and nothing to do with it. You know what I mean? So I think you have to look at all those different potentials. Cats are the same way. I know if Skylar gets, you're gonna laugh, but she's my little high energy girl, and she loves to go outside. And whenever she wants something, she's either jumping on my lap or jumping up, and she's like nose bumping me,
right. I see that
like
all the time
you
with
know,
cats. Like,
it's
mom,
she's
mom,
just
hello,
like,
hello.
"Mom, hello, will you please pay attention, and will you please open the door for me because I really want to go play outside." And sometimes I can't do that for various reasons, but she's so persistent. So what does she do? She goes over you know that packing paper that comes in like your shipment boxes, and it's the brown wrapping paper or whatever they stuff in for just
Right,
filler.
right.
Okay, well,
Uh-huh.
I save a lot of those and I put it out on the floor for playtime, and because I like to crawl, hide
Right.
under it and
Like,
play and all that kind of stuff. And it makes noise, right? It crinkles.
right.
So she'll go over there and she'll just start biting the paper and ripping it. She's just got to have an outlet for her energy. And she's over there just like frustrated, like, okay, I'm just gonna chew on this paper and leave bits all over the floor
Until mom gets off the
until
phone
I
and
just
opens up the
get
back
what I
door.
want,
Right.
Like this morning, I was like, it was pouring rain outside. I'm like, you can't go outside.
This
You
kid's
just
like,
can't go outside right now. It's really wet and it's like thunder and lightning and windy, not a good combination for putting you outside. So, she's just, but that's her. I've got to always have some kind of an outlet. And speaking of them, she's outside right now. It's
mom.
cleared up. It's a beautiful night, and the girls are outside
Oh, good. Okay. So
entertaining themselves. Yeah.
entertaining themselves. Well,
Hmm.
going back to this lady talking to her about her puppy, about, the anxiety and all that. And it was like, for me, it was really interesting to find out, because it's like, after it took an hour, or a good 45 minutes into our conversations to really start to unravel
Hmm.
where the puppy's anxiety was coming from.
Hmm.
Because I was like, okay, so what's this environment like for him? And I ask all these like different questions about, do you take him to the dog park? Is he a pandemic puppy? Was he born during the pandemic? Or he was at the end of the pandemic? Okay. So I ask all these different questions. And then of course, asking all these different questions, you really start to get personal with the pet parent and get to know them. And
Hmm.
just, hey, what's your story? What's my story? Everybody wants to hear how everybody loves to hear our story, like how, where I started, like how long ago, what made me decide to do this, and blah blah blah. Like, people love that. And so I was telling her about all this, and all of a sudden she gets to the point, she's like her dog started barking. All of a sudden she goes, she goes, see, there he is again, he's barking away, I just can't stop him. I'm like, and so I'm like, I take the moment, I seize on the moment, I'm like, well, what is he barking at?
Hmm.
And she goes, oh, my ex-husband. And I'm like, "Oh, why is he barking at your ex-husband?" And she's like, "Oh, well, he just, he's just staying with me for a while, and he's just like his energy and blah, blah," and I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 Sharon, let's talk about the energy in the house right now.
Yeah.
Are you happy?
Yeah.
Are you centered?" And she goes, "No, I'm not centered." And I go, well, right there, that's a big part. That's a root of the cause right there. Your dog is feeling your
Their
energy
energy.
and your ex-husband's energy, and it's time to make it. If you want it to change, you can make it, you can change it, but you've got to be able to make it. You got to change it.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
That's a great. I'm so glad you did that. That's bravo, because it's really about bringing awareness.
it's awareness to your surroundings sometimes, because sometimes the root of the cause is right in front of you and you don't even know what it is.
You're not associating it with
Anything
that.
personal.
You're thinking that there's something wrong and this dog is it's bad behavior and is unruly and barks all the time. And we don't, like you said, you don't sit down and really look at the situation and think things through and become an observer without emotion, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, she was really, and it was cute because she was like, she was talking to me about our business, and she's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you. Where are you? Are you in pet stores here?" And the pet store that happened to be near her just closed down, unfortunately.
Hmm.
So I told her she had to buy online unless she wanted to come here and she could pick it up. She wasn't really far from us, but it didn't work out for her. But so she ordered it online. But we were talking, and God, I just totally blanked. I totally blanked. Don't you? I hate when I do that. I was like on this roll, and all of a sudden, boom! I said one thing off my script in my head, and I went a total different direction. Um,
But you got her thinking differently. So
well,
that
and
was,
that's what, yeah, and that's I think that's where I was going with it. It's just like it's really, this is all in a journey, and we're always learning along the way as long as we keep our ears open. And like I said,
mhm,
I clocked it. It took, up to 45 minutes of a conversation to actually get to the root of the cause. And like you said, oh, this is where I was going with that. It's like, well, once again, going back to the paradigm of life and what we've been taught in life, that sticks with us. So where do we instantly go if we think something's wrong, or we go to what we were told is wrong? Is it's got to be this? It's got to be my dog's unruly. My dog's, never da, 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 and then then towards the end of our conversation, this is another sign right here. I was like, bingo, she goes, and it's so horrible. She goes, I have to have him, run around the house in a diaper because he'll go out. He knows to go to the bathroom outside, but when he comes back in the house, he starts marking the house again. And I'm
mhm.
like, well, he's marking because your ex-husband's there. He's trying to protect you.
Or he doesn't feel safe.
And he doesn't feel safe. And you heard it in her voice that she doesn't feel safe. It's causing
Mhm.
her all this stress. She goes, well, maybe I need to take some No More Drama. I said, I think you do. I said,
Mhm.
take a syringe, the night, when you get it that night, just take a full syringe and go to bed. And as you're watching TV, tell me how your sleep is the next day, like Jimmy.
Yes.
But
Yes. That's funny.
yeah, our environments can do so much. One of the things that, when we talk about longevity, because we have, and, I was talking to her yesterday too. She's like, oh, what about CBD? We use a lot of CBD, a lot of CBD. And I said, CBD is great. I said, for what you're going to use it for. She goes, well, what's the difference between your product and CBD? And I said, well, let's since we're talking about longevity, we'll talk about longevity. If you look at our longevity, we have 20 different herbs in our formula. We
Mhm.
don't just have one or two things. Okay.
Right.
And then when I go down those herbs, like it's called abervite seed. It eases nighttime restlessness, supports gentle restoration. And then the next one, it keeps brain and heart vessels going. And then the next herb nourishes the marrow and the red blood cells. So each one of these herbs are not just attacking, oh, we're just going to fix this little area. It's actually going throughout the whole body, like a whole little kit of little guys with little hard hats on, chiseling
Mhm.
away at the next thing, fixing it. Cause like when I look at our herbs and I look at each one and what each one does, two of them don't do the same thing. They're all doing something else, but in
Mm.
harmony, they're
Mhm.
supporting the system so incredibly strong
Yeah.
and boosting that immune system. So I said, well, that's right there. Really, the difference is like, ours is attacking it from 20 different angles, and whatever you're using the CBD for, what's in there, and what are those attacking, so it was interesting for me because I keep learning about our product even more all the time.
Mhm. Mhm.
by doing these lives and understanding, like looking at our list right now. It's just like I was surprised when I opened up the list and I started looking at all the benefits and what it's used for and how
Mhm.
many herbs that are actually in there. And so, but so I think I was going kind of longevity because a lot of people think like what you were saying is like it's changing. We're talking like it's changing these days, and it's because people are starting to become more aware of
Mhm.
what's out there and how they can be a better wellness parent for their pets in many different ways, whether it's just energy. Are you living in a household that's absolutely tearing you and your puppy apart? Like yesterday when I was on that conversation, and I like the lady. She was lovely. She was like such a sweetheart. And I felt for her, and I felt her desperation.
Mhm.
I felt her desperation. And so, and it's, and I always get into like these little coaching moments with people. I love doing that. So by the end of our conversation, I'm like, okay, so before we go, what's the, let's make a list of what you're going to do to change your environment. Right.
Mhm.
And she's like, well, I've been talking to this one lady that, we're talking about maybe actually I'm going to rent out my house. Cause if I rent out my house and that puts me out on the street and it puts him out on the street and I have to go find a place to live and he has to go find a place to live. I'm like, well, I expect that to be your first phone call when we hang up. And I don't know if it was or not, but she was like, oh my God, you're absolutely Michael. I'm just dragging my feet on this, aren't I? And I'm like, yes, you are.
You're like a therapist.
I totally am. I'm like, I'm like, okay, let's get to the real house here. Okay, let's talk about life. Kick the sucker out.
You never know where conversations will lead. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it is. It is. And, we're talking about, well, we're on longevity. I want to grab me. I got a little footrest for my hip. So that's
Oh,
like,
okay.
so
Yes,
now,
go for it.
so now it's like, I have to like squeeze in and out, but actually it helps. It's so much easier. This is another one of our formula, eat. It's for
Mhm.
digestion and all that. And this, you don't learn these things until you do these things, right? Until you're in the midst of it and you're in the thick of it, and all of a sudden all this stuff is happening, and you start to learn, you start to see how people react to products and how they use them and when they use them and when they don't use them or when they should use them and they
Mhm.
don't. There's all we've learned so much over these last 5 years about our product and how it's best used and the surprising time when people actually use it. And I brought this one up because this one's a really interesting one because like this one here, eat. I mean, this one is great for poor appetite. So, if a puppy or a cat has gone through surgery and they just don't have the
Mhm.
appetite, it'll stimulate the appetite. Bad breath, general digestion support, loose stool, post antibiotic support, nutritional deficiency, and weight loss. And so,
Mhm.
it really kind of balances out the gut, GI, and all that again, right? And one of the things, and I like to share this from time to time, is like people will buy this and this is our number one returned product.
Wow,
Okay.
that's interesting.
Wait till you hear why.
Okay.
People buy this in the last week or
Oh.
two of their pet transitioning.
Mhm. Mhm.
And if depending when, like, if they buy it late Saturday night, well, postal's not Sunday, so it doesn't go out to Monday. And depending on what shipment you get, it may take a few days to get to you. And so, because
Mhm.
it doesn't get to the pet in time for the pet parent, then they're like, can we return it? And we always say, well, now that you have it, we don't have a return policy where you will take it back. But what we do is we'll return your money and we just ask you to give it to a rescue.
Mhm.
Take it to one of your rescues and let them take advantage
Use
of
it.
the benefit,
Yeah.
so then that way we're sharing the love. Um, but so it's like when you hear like, oh, your number one return product is, and it's like, but no, there's a reason behind it because people in their pet ends up transitioning before they get it.
Because
You
they
know,
wait too late to make changes.
they wait too late, but also it's like, and to me it's like, for you and me, you'll get this, I know you will. It's like for you and me, it's like, is it too late for this particular moment? Yes. But for the pet parent, is it too late? No. You know what? It's fantastic that they bought it, because that
Mhm.
means they're looking and they're searching and they're educating themselves, and they know that, hey, I didn't get it in time this time, but next time I will,
Mhm.
or next time
Mhm.
I'll look at something else that maybe will prolong his life or her life or whatever. So,
It's
yeah,
a catalyst for doing things differently.
yeah, it is. It's part of that, curve that, we don't like
Mhm.
that side of the curve, but it is part of
Yeah.
the curve that we have to deal with, and we want to learn from it, and we do learn from it. So it's
Yep.
interesting to share that with people, just that, if you're, because the whole idea behind like our longevity or any longevity formulas out there is just to really boost your immune system, whether it's your dog or your cat or your horse or yourself. Like I take this every day now. I take this twice a day, and it's really made a difference in just how I feel in my energy. And I was injured, so then I'd have to take pain meds from time to time, and I don't like taking them because they make you stupid. Well,
Mhm.
my memory's clearing up a little bit now that I've been on it for over a month solid. I've been like,
Yeah.
okay, we're doing it like this. And it's amazing how these herbs work. I don't know how they work, but it's amazing that they work. And it's,
Mhm.
yeah. So, longevity, you guys, this feline fountain of youth here. Let's, and it's not just for your cat, it's for your dog, it's for your pet, it's for, and it's cute because I had one of my pet stores on the East Coast called me yesterday, and she's like, Michael, she goes, I'm so excited. I'm like, what? And she goes, you could tell I have really fun conversations. Michael, I'm so excited. I put all this on it, right?
Yep.
And I'm like, what is it? And she goes, I get to put my horse back on Ouchie. And
Mm.
and I'm like going, what's going on? And because her vet said, well, because they found, look who's this?
Well, hello, Aiden.
Look who it is.
Miss Aylin's
Uh,
here. Hiya.
uh-huh.
There's always one comes in.
She's always
Oh.
on.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so they had found that the horse had some other things that they wanted to address, so they didn't want anything else inside their system during that time.
Mhm.
And she's like, I'm just so excited, Michael. She goes, because when I had him on the Ouchie formula, he was doing so well. And when I had to take him off of it, we saw a decline in
Oh.
in his hips, in his joints, from walking and all that. And that's our Ouchie formula for pain. And so it's just like, so, and once again, you just you see that with a horse,
Yeah.
that's how strong these formulas are. It's like, we have big ones for horses and for, for No More Drama, for Ouchie. And, they're asking us for the full line now. And now that we've gotten approved to be able to put it on our site, we're working on it. But it's like, anyway, so Chinese herbs. So that's, it's always fun to hear all these different stories and learn everything that we're learning about our product and about how it works for your pet. And,
Mhm.
and it's so exciting to see people out there looking up. What can I
Yeah.
do? You know,
Differently.
what can I
Mhm.
do differently? What can I do more? How can I make my pet's life better? Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's always like, for me, it's like when we first started this, we only had, Kyle had 3 formulas. And it was one of my strong points that I really wanted to make sure that we had more than just one thing. I wanted one thing for all the top common issue pets have, and that's where we went down with his partner who's a veterinarian, and we just kind of said, okay, let's list like the top, 10 or whatever issues pets have every day.
Mhm.
You see what are the common things, and so we kind of based our formulas off of the common things. And I have to say we're pretty lucky. We hit it. I think we pretty much hit it spot on. I mean, some of our formulas like fly out the door. Some you don't. Some you don't need that often, so they don't fly that.
Right.
But we have it, which is great. Is that we do
Mhm.
have it.
Yeah. It's awesome.
So I've got this little list here. I always like to print things, and it's like for you, since You're Miss Feline lady here, right?
Yeah.
Um, our cat
Mhm.
lady of the evening. When with your cats, when do you start to see aging really start to take effect? I mean, do you notice
With
it like
my own cats or just in with other people?
just
With
in
mine?
like your cat? I mean, I think your cats age way differently than your clients. You know,
Well, yeah, and I tell people all the time it's because I'm doing things completely differently now with the cats that I have versus the ones I had 10 years ago, or even longer than that. So I started making changes back in mid 2000s as I was learning about my own health processes, ways to better my health and take things out of my environment that weren't benefiting me. And so I started learning more about how to do that for them mid to late 2000s. I think diet really has a lot to do with it, because there is such a thing as metabolic stress and it affects the whole body. So if we're doing it right, their metabolism is good. And their energy is good. Their skin and coat is good. It just keeps them operating at a high level and super healthy. That's like the foundation. So if we can get that down and do really, really well at diet and nutrition for them, that's like the foundation of longevity. Um, when we don't get that right, that's when you start to see chronic illness kind of creep in. Um, all the symptoms that are associated with chronic disease and illness that so many people just kind of pass off as normal, but it's really not. It doesn't have to be normal. It can be common, but it's not a normal part of longevity. It's kind of the opposite. So if we can get the nutrition down and feed them a really good quality carnivore feline diet, that's huge. That's huge.
and that seems like it's such a hard one for cat parents. Like, it's like, is it because they were because the marketing of like these big food companies like kibble, 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 Friskies, Frisky, Frisky, listen to me, I'm like those tunes are popping up in my head, you know.
Well, that's a good point because I think we were programmed for decades to think that kibble was the end all be all. And it's convenient. You can leave your cat for 3 days and go out of town and just leave him a big bag, a big bowl of kibble. Hello, I've been there.
Oh my God.
I,
When you just said that, I had to like, I'm glad you even stopped and said, I've been there, because like when you said that, I'm like going, I remember when I was younger, what did I
uh-huh,
do? I had a big
yeah.
bowl of kibble because I traveled so much. I had a self-cleaning cat box and kibble, and
Hmm.
a watering tower bowl
Yeah.
thing, and
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'll see you in a few days, and it's like, yeah, we were programmed and we were thinking, okay,
We
we're
were, yeah. And hello, those popular pet food commercials you see on TV, they spend a lot of money on marketing to convince you of those things. And so we just when you see something over and over and over and over again, it is programming into your subconscious mind, whether you realize it or not. And the next time you go into the pet store, you're going to think about that commercial and that food that you saw advertised, and you're going to go, you know what? I want to go try that.
well,
I mean, that's just how we're wired. But
well,
that's all about marketing. And
And
so,
that's what I was just gonna say is like I had a partner that he was in the marketing business, and they did those like where you'd walk in, you'd have a round table and they'd show you
yeah.
you'd be a person there to evaluate the product for them, and then there would be a double glass that the client sitting on the other side listening to the response and all that.
Mhm.
And it's
Mhm.
all this marketing that they've been doing for long forever, and
Yeah.
talking forever. And I wanted to ask you about this because it shocked me yesterday to find the year out. But um, with NARS owning VCA here in the States, right? And they
Mhm.
bought it.
Mhm.
I thought that was just kind of like a recent purchase, but no, that happened in 2017.
Mhm. Mm.
So
Yeah, it
they've
was a
been
while
behind.
ago. It was
So
8
they've
years
been
ago.
behind. So they've been behind the wheel for a while with that. I had
Mhm.
no idea. Okay, wow.
Yeah, and it's interesting how sometimes people don't even realize because it's not like they put out a big sign and says, "Guess what? A candy company owns us now." You know, when you take your pet in there, they may as well just have bowls of candy bars laying around too, you know? Um, but yeah, it's become a profit center and run like a corporation and a business that's more focused on profits than health, unfortunately. And I can't say that that's in all cases, but I would say by vast majority that's the case.
Well, it's kind of like, we're talking about big businesses, and when you were like, and that's just big business. They just buy it and they just do it, and boom, there's just And one of the things, like, it reminded me of talking to God, now his name just flew by my head again. The guy, the whiz, the finance guy, the number one finance guy in the United States. What's his name? You know,
I'm not a finance
it's not
person.
it's not like Alan. He owns, I mean, Warren Buffett.
Oh, okay. The one who just stepped down and is resigning from his board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That guy there. One of their big businesses, because I knew his partner, Charlie Munger, which was his like other half, basically, to his company, to
Mhm.
Hathaway. And I did a lot of work for Charlie and his family and design and all that. So it's interesting what you learn when you're in the background of these homes and you're you know,
Oh, yeah.
you see the workings going on. And talk about big business. This is like what was crazy for me for Warren is like, because I heard him and Charlie talking, right? And they were like, he was always in his den speaking and doing. Charlie was always in his room, and that's where you found Charlie. And he'd be on his computer and talk. They talk like this, or like from the Midwest.
Mhm.
They were going around buying up all the mobile home parks.
Hmm.
And it was just like one of those, it was such an, it was, and I just share that because it was such an odd big business. Like, why is, a candy company buying a pet company? You know what I mean? Why don't you stay in your lane, And then all of a sudden you see these people, it's like, no, they go where the money is.
That's
And,
true.
and that's what it is. And it's like, and then, I dove deeper into that, I spoke to my godmother about it, and she goes, yeah, we own a few. I'm like, you own a few? She goes, yeah, we own a few. I'm like, trailer park? She's like, yeah. And I'm like going, oh my God, I can't believe it. She goes, Michael, she goes, it's crazy. She goes, it's the biggest money making thing out there. I'm like, well, I wouldn't think so, because usually they're not, it's like a lower income potentially, or mid income,
Mhm.
there are some that are really nice that I've even gone, wow, I could live here. Um, but she said no. She goes, and they've got this whole poor gimmick, and I don't know how I totally really railroaded on this one, but it's funny, is that they turn around and they wait for the person where they can't pay their rent, because they up their rent, because once they buy it, they up the rent in all the parks, and then so many people can't pay their rent, so then they have to move. And usually the people that, unfortunately are struggling to pay their rent are usually in the older homes. And if you move in your home's a certain age, you have to move your home because it doesn't meet the standards of today's
Mm.
park rules. So then they have to move their home. And if they can't move their home, then they lose their home, because then they just leave it and they just go find a new. I mean, it's just like this big game. So, if they're doing that with people's livelihoods and where they live,
Yes.
their nighttime place to sleep. What is Mars doing behind the scenes to our veterinarian system here? I
I
don't know.
think yeah,
I don't know.
not good. I wouldn't guess it's very good.
Well, and thank God we have people like, like what you're saying, like, the forever dog, you know.
Mhm. Mhm.
Thank God we've got people out there doing these things. It's like, we were talking earlier, and it was one of those things where Katie Woodley popped up in my head where I forget what we were talking about, but it was some sort of transition that she did from human to pets to humans and back. You know, she kind of went back and forth because of her husband's
Yeah.
illness, you know, so
Yep.
she kind of did this, and it's just like, it was really fascinating to spend time with her and just learn all that she's learned in her journey.
Mhm.
You know, and when we're talking about it, and I'll grab the book, I'm going to grab the book real quick.
Yeah. Amanda, I'm reading your comment. She says, my local grocery store just got a raw cat food product. Ingredient list looks good, free of any bad stuff. I haven't tried it yet. Maybe tonight. Oh, that's awesome. Do you know what brand it is? Because that would be interesting to know what they're selling over in Oz these days. So if you know, drop a link or drop a name down here. Yeah, that's cool.
Did you introduce the book for us?
No, I was talking to Amanda about a comment she put over here.
Oh,
The
okay.
book that you're referring to was written by Dr. Karen Becker and Rodney Habib, called The Forever Dog. And then there's The Forever Dog Life, which is the recipe book of how to create your own recipes and DIY home products and things like that. That's for healthier, non-toxic living and super nutritious food and all that good stuff.
Yeah. So, I
Excellent.
mean, yeah, it's a
It's
great
all
book,
about longevity.
and it's all about longevity. And it's like,
Yes.
and this is another book that I found before Karen's book, is with Connor
Connor
Brett.
Brady.
Uh-huh.
Yep. He's awesome. He's
Yeah,
awesome.
it was a really good, you know, and really it's just basic cooking. If you really get down to it and you really start to read these recipes, it's really getting back just to basic
Hmm.
cooking. And it's like, you know, and it's like, how often do we like get so trapped up in all this commercial
Yep.
additives and all this stuff to put into our food to make it taste better, but in reality it's just get back to basics, right?
Well, and one of the things that they're finding in longevity studies is that the more diverse the microbiome, the longer these pets live. For example, the longest lived dog, Bobby, from Portugal, I think he was 33. He lived until 33 years old, which is phenomenal in dogs, your dog years, right? But he lived on, you know, with a wonderful family, and he was outside every day. They grow their own food, they cook their own food all the time. And he was constantly in their garden nibbling on this herb and that herb and eating a variety of foods, um, typically stews, gently cooked things, and things like he ate what the family ate and lived to be 33 years old. Um, that's phenomenal, and they actually they took a poop sample for animal biome labs to evaluate when they were there the first time and kind of, taking all this information and talking to the family and figuring out what was their secret to his longevity. And they were, he got fresh air every day. He went on walks. He was outside. He was surrounded by love, a loving family. He ate nutritious home cooked meals, fresh from the garden with a variety of foods and, clean proteins. Um, it it makes it really makes a difference, and they weren't putting um, flea and tick toxic products on him. He did have a few vaccines over his lifetime, but he wasn't what you would consider an over vaccinated animal like we have here. So yeah, I think when you step back and you look at the difference of how that dog how he lived his life and compare it to how pets are raised here, very, very different, right?
Well, yeah, because he lived, so Portuguese, so he was a Portuguese dog.
Yeah.
And so you can just imagine just what, what was there, just all that, there's a beautiful side of that countryside. So it's like,
Hmm.
yeah. And it was running around. Yeah. Bobby.
Bobby.
Little Bobby, God, 30. Well, here it says, you'll get different ages, I'm sure, everywhere where you look. Here it says he lived to the age of 31.
31. Okay. I knew it was early 30s. I thought it was 33. So
Yeah.
31. But
Yeah.
still, oh my goodness. That doesn't happen here, you know?
We
I mean,
don't have,
we don't get dogs living over what, 13, 14 typically. And if someone does have a dog that lives, or even a cat that lives, into a cat specifically, like into their 20s, wow. Wow. Now, I will say some of that is genetic, especially, if it's living in the States. It's part of that is probably good genes. But part of that is probably what they ate, their environment, you know, their lack of toxin exposure,
right. Yeah.
fresh air, grounding outside, love, no stress, those kinds, regular exercise, all those good things. So when you step back and you can just, think about what you already know for us as humans, what helps us live longer. Well, fresh water, exercise, clean air, eating healthy diets, you know what I'm saying? Being in a low stress, not living in sympathetic nervous system mode all the time. That does promote more longevity. So it's, of course, it's going to be that for our animals.
I had to, while you were doing that, I had to look up to see. We said, what was the longest living dog? Bobby, right? Well, who is the cat? And the cat's name was Cream Puff.
Oh, funny. Cream puff.
And he was in Austin, Texas, right near you.
Okay.
Okay. He was the oldest verified cat ever. White Flossie, born on the 29th of December, 1995. And verified cat as of 28 years.
Wow. That's amazing.
So that's
That's
the monarch age reported, but then there was another one where they reported no, he was 33 years. So
mm,
so it goes back, but still, just God to hear that time frame, and it
yeah.
and it and you, like you're saying, it's like how their life is and all that, and do you think it has anything to do with how domesticated they're becoming?
Well, define, like, how do you mean?
Well, like dogs, cats, 30 years ago, they were just kind of outdoor pets. They weren't family then, necessarily.
Mm,
Do you think it's because they're so domesticated that they are living a better life, that they're living longer, maybe?
it probably depends on where they're living. Like if they're living out in the country on a farm and they're exposed to soil and they're not in a their risk of danger is low versus living in a city with, busy streets and, you know, there's a little greater risk for letting your cat outside, not living quite as long a life if they're in that kind of environment. So
Right.
you and the pollution in the cities and all of that. So it probably really depends a lot on their environment, you know. Um, but that's a good question.
Yeah, it's interesting. So we've got Cream Puff and Bobby.
Cream Puff and Bobby.
Cream Puff and Bobby, the longest living.
Hmm.
That's crazy. Yeah, because mine was like 18, 19 years old when he passed. And I was amazed at that. I was like, oh my God, who
Yeah.
knew?
Well,
And yeah, go on.
no, I was just going to say I've talked to several people just over the years whose cats are 18, 19, 20, and they're starting to have these more serious health conditions later in life. And it's interesting how a lot of these people would say, I never take my cat to the vet and I never get him vaccinated because I don't believe in all that. And he eats wet food at the very minimum as a diet, or they cook, raw, or they do raw food or whatever. Um, but lots of love and, no stress, no toxins. These people they're doing something right if they're getting to that long of a life and their cat is, just now starting to decline. And at some point, organs do wear out. Let's face it, that's a real fact. Can't really do much about that, but we can give them as much support and do as many things as we can to help minimize the oxidation stress, metabolic, emotional stress that just wears us down, and contributes to the aging process faster.
Right, 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 right.
Hmm. And then targeted support, like if your cat has struggled, you know, often or every now and then with a specific issue, or if you know that the breed of your cat is more susceptible to developing a type of disease, or like they're predisposed to for genetically for something, you can start supporting those specific organs or glands or just body systems with targeted or supplementation, support their microbiome, and for targeted reasons. Kind of in the same way, if you're going to get a large breed puppy, you want to make sure you're feeding them certain types of foods that are supporting a dog that's going to grow really big, because their needs are different than a dog who's really small. You know what I'm saying? So there's so many good things that we can do for the cats to support them with targeted things, throughout their life too.
Yeah, yeah. I was when you were saying that, I was thinking of something. I totally lost what I was thinking about da, 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 cats and then.
Targeted support, organs, aging.
There's one thing you because you were talking about people are feeding raw and
Hmm.
for or wet food and all that, and it's like when you start talking about that, my blood just boils a little bit. It's like I just want to shake people. I'm like, do you hear us? We're talking about it's just food. Start there. Start with the food. It's
Hmm.
really the longevity starts with the food from day one, not from 15 years on.
Yeah.
But it does help if you start 15 years on. It's not don't give up because he's 15 years old or she's 15 years old.
Yeah.
But start. The one thing that when you were talking about all that is like predisposition issues that pets have and all that, and especially if they're of a hybrid breed,
Hmm.
you really want to know that. And so I had a chance, and it's actually on the Pets Journey. I talked to Lisa, and she used to own this company called Paw Print Genetics,
Okay.
and she used to do DNA screening for kids with autism.
Hmm.
And so once again, another wonderful journey story where all of a sudden here she was helping all these kids, and then all of a sudden, her pets were suffering from this and that. She's like, well, why don't I do a test on my pet? Let me start to
Hmm.
do pets. And so she created all these different tests, and there's a few companies out there doing it now. But the one thing she said that was like so important, I think, and I want to pass it on about our longevity. Once again, it's food, 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 food. Besides food is food. No, is to really start them off on the best thing possible. And if you do spend a lot of money to buy a specific breed, know the breed, like what Pam was talking about with a bigger dog. That bigger dog breed is going to has different requirements in
Hmm.
nutrition growing up, because they do have they're growing faster, they're going to grow bigger, and
Yeah.
you want it to be healthy growth, not unhealthy growth. So and so one of the things she said, like if someone's going to invest $15,000-$20,000 on a breed for a pet, get to know the breed.
Hmm.
Don't just spend $20,000 because it's an Abyssinian that's from Kenya
Yeah.
or whatever. You know what I mean? Get
Yeah. Know
get to
what you're
know
getting into.
Yeah, get to know the breed. So then she says, then throughout their life, what their predisposition issues are, and all the, what they're
Hmm.
prone to and all that. And then you can always, like, when you go in for the checkups, then you're going in for the checkup for the right thing.
Yeah, like for example, some breeds may be more predisposed to having heart issues.
Yeah.
I think Maine Coons might be one of those. Don't quote me on that, or let me know in the comments if that is incorrect. but for some reason that's coming to mind. So that is something that you can screen for every year to just to check heart function, but you can also start supporting them with heart targeted supplementation, and extra nutrition that feeds the heart, like heart, things like that. That's just simple ways to support a specific breed. But again, it doesn't hurt once you know what you're dealing with. Just it's not hard to go figure out, okay, how can we support them for longevity, knowing that they have this issue or they may develop this issue. If your cat has a predisposition to develop kidney disease, well, let's start now making sure that their diet is, moisture rich and probably raw food. And what kind of herbs can we put in there that kidneys love? And detoxification, supporting detoxification for liver and kidneys, because kidneys filter toxins just like the liver does, but it's kind of a secondary down, it's down the hill. But those are just things to think about, and as they get older, you can start incorporating more, specific targeted support depending on the age of the cat, and whatever it is that they might be predisposed to struggle with.
Right, and get them ready for the next generation.
Yeah, and that
life. That's the way. That's the best way to do it, right?
Yeah, because if we can support that organ, it can sustain itself longer.
Yeah, and I just want to say, so Mancoons, they are prone for heart disease.
That's what I thought I read. Yeah,
it's thickening of the heart muscle walls, so it can cause heart failure later on in life. And once again, and that's what I learned from Lisa on Paw Pet Genetics, is that there's so many people, like there's a rule of like how close you can breed a family member to its family member in a breed.
Yes.
And unfortunately, a lot of people, that we call backyard breeders or barely breeders, they don't necessarily, they're inbreeding all the time, and that's when all these issues really start to take effect. And that's why, like the Mancoons, when they probably first started off, they probably didn't have this heart issue, but somewhere along the line people were breeding them so closely, it genetically screwed up their heart. And that's what she was talking about. She goes, if you're going to spend a lot of money on a dog or a cat, get to know the genetics of it, especially your specific cat, or your dog. Get to know their genetics, because maybe it's going to skip their generation and they're not going to see that marker missing, or they're not going to see that marker of that disease. And that's something you won't have to worry about. So it's another thing for, longevity, is like, start them off fresh, young, with the right proper diet and all that. And I think really, for me, it's like when we really get down to it, longevity, thank God we have these herbs like we have, like in longevity here, that can assist at my age and help keep me stronger and healthier, and our pets stronger and healthier. But, if, I had kids, I definitely would be on a different route with them, feeding them and, giving them nutrition, especially now. But now, and I say this, you guys, I'm just as guilty, because I fed my cat kibble. I was one of those people that left for 3 days, because that's what we were programmed to do. Like, oh, you can do this. You can, it's not going to hurt.
It's just a cat.
It's just a cat.
I'm guilty. I did that when I was, in my teens, late teens, early 20s, because you don't know any different.
Yeah, we didn't, and these and these shifts don't happen immediate, so a lot of people are like going, oh my God, I got to jump on this and get on this right away and do this right away. No, baby step yourself into this. You've got, especially if you got a new kitten right now, you've got a good, 15 to 19, maybe 20 something years if you do it right with that kitten. So start now and set them up to win.
Absolutely.
Because if you start now and you give them the right diet, you'll set them up to win, and it's going to be a companion probably for a good part of your life. Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
Well, we before we jumped on, everybody, Pam and I discussed that we're going to just do this live for an hour today. I've got to run off to my meeting a little earlier today than normal. I want to say thank you to everybody. This was a great topic, longevity. It's all about getting back to the basics. That's, when we talk about this over and over and over, it's the basics of just like starting, what are you putting in your mouth? What are you putting in your pet's mouth? Is it healthy? Is it something you would want to eat? That's a good one there. Would you eat what they're eating? I don't think so. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us on the Pet's Journey for the Longevity Deep Dive. Remember, small daily habits, nutrition, defense, food, target herbs like Forever Young can add priceless years. And I'm talking about years. I was talking about a story about a friend that his dog had cancer and she ended up living a year longer because we got her on Forever Young. And the only thing we can think of is like, it just boosted her immune system so strongly. It just slowed down that growth. So, there's things out there that we can do differently today. So don't be afraid to look at the future with new pair of glasses, you guys, because there's so much information coming our way these days. And we've got so many new wonderful tools to find this information. It's not as hard as it used to be. And you guys just keep coming back here, keep coming back to Pam's sites. And we will see you guys next week. Pam, thank you again so much for joining us, and go have fun with your little family friends there. She's keeping down there. She's like, okay, I came in, I bugged, I put my butt in Michael's face for a second, right? All right, guys.
He's around here somewhere.
Yeah. Okay, guys, everybody have a beautiful week. I'll see you guys next week. Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
We're out of here. Have a good